My special look now at packing heat. In the wake of the Colorado school shooting, would you believe putting more guns on the street equal less crime? Dr. John Lott, professor at the University of Chicago, has written a brand new startling book called More Guns, Less Crime. And he says packing heat is a deterrent that helps reduce crime.
Those states that issue the most permits have the biggest drops in violent crime. And as more permits are issued over time in a state, the further drop in violent crime corresponds very closely with the percentage of the adult population with these permits.
Lott conducted a 15-year study, 1977 to 92, in 10 different states. They're all shaded in red. And he found that violent crime, murder, and rape had all dropped dramatically after those states adopted concealed weapon laws. He claims that concealed guns work as a deterrent.
If victims are able to defend themselves, then there's going to be some criminals who are going to think twice about whether or not to attack. Criminals like to attack victims that they perceive of as being relatively weak.
Maria Telesco of Fresno, who is against the death penalty and a gun opponent, disagrees.
And I don't think that that means that everybody, that, every warm body who's walking around should be allowed to have a gun. I really don't. I think it's a tremendous responsibility and a tremendous risk.
Police Chief Ed Winchester agrees.
You go back to the old frontier days when everybody carried a gun. Still had crime, it just came down to who could shoot the fastest and the quickest.
Fresno County Sheriff Richard Pierce.
The ability to carry a concealed weapon, do you think that's a deterrent to crime or not?
Yeah, I think it can be, absolutely. If criminals know that you're armed, they know you're armed, they're less likely, in many instances, to view you as a victim.
Lott points to Dallas, where in 1996, shortly after they passed a concealed weapons law, Gordon Hale was involved in a minor traffic accident with the driver of this truck. He claims he was suddenly accosted by that driver and nearly beaten to death. Hale pulled out his concealed gun and shot Kevin Tavai dead.
If I did not have a handgun with me, I could have been killed, or he could have got me out of the truck and just stomped my head in.
Dallas police charged Hale with murder, but he was later acquitted by a grand jury. And Lott believes that carrying a concealed gun is especially helpful to women and might have saved the 3 women found dead near Yosemite.
And the presence of a gun is something that can offset that difference and allow these women a chance when there's nobody else, when they're out in some isolated area. It's very difficult to think of what other types of things that they could do.
Are women safer carrying a gun? Well, that is the subject of my next report, and coming up in about 15 minutes. I pay a visit to the shooting range with 5 women who work right here at KMPH.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, so am I.
It's going to be a good one.
Back to my special look now at packing heat. Last year, Assemblyman Rico Aller, a Republican from Northern California, tried to push through a bill that would have made it a lot easier to get a concealed weapons permit right here in California. It failed, but Aller believes if every woman carried a gun, the bad guys would lose. Women toting guns. Assemblyman Rico Aller says,
and the relative advantage of a concealed weapons permit for a woman is much greater than it is for a man. In fact, the crime that is reduced most dramatically is the crime of rape.
When it comes to rape, there are many different scenarios that can play out in just a few seconds. Where is the rape occurring? Inside a home, on the street, in a parking lot similar to this one? Does the attacker have a gun? Is the attacker on top of you? Where is your gun? Is it on you? Is it in your purse? Can you get to it? Can you pull the trigger? I posed those questions to 5 women who met me at the shooting range. They all work for KMPH, and they all went through a brief instruction on how to shoot.
Just that loud bang, and it's kind of a shock to you, but you just want to concentrate on the gun and what you're doing. Okay, now squeeze the trigger again. Okay, that's pretty good. Again.
Heather is a first-time shooter.
Okay, I think you're ready.
As is Karen. And Karen. Kelly shot guns in the Navy. Michelle owns her own Smith & Wesson 9mm police issue. Could any of these women defend themselves if they carried a gun?
I think so. I did pretty well out in the shooting range, so I think I could.
You're not afraid? You wouldn't panic?
I think I would be very afraid, and hopefully I wouldn't panic.
I suppose I could, but I wouldn't really want to. I'm not fond of the idea of carrying a gun or using it.
I definitely think I could. I think that anyone can learn how to use a gun safely, as long as you practice enough and get the right coaching.
Again, if I think I was afraid enough and it was important enough to me, I could. But if I had time to think about it, I don't know how well I would perform.
I think everybody kind of panics when somebody's coming after them, but, you know, I do think I would be able to defend myself if I did have a gun.
Those are their thoughts, but would any of those women buy a gun and carry it? Well, as mentioned, Michelle already owns a gun, but she doesn't want to carry it. Only Karen Carrasco said, yes, I would buy and carry it and use it if I had to. Tomorrow night, right here on the KMPH 10 o'clock news, how easy is it to get a concealed weapons permit right here in Fresno County? And when can you use deadly force?
Yeah, because we were talking about not anybody can just go out and get a gun.
No,
right?
they can't, but I'm not going to give the story away. I have to
All
wait
right.
till tomorrow night.
Well, you got me hooked. Thanks,
Yeah.
John.
Now to my special look at packing heat. Remember, to apply for a permit, you must first own a gun. Then local law enforcement decides whether or not you're qualified. Currently, 43 states, including the Golden State of California, have the right to carry law. 7 do not. If you want a permit in this state, the law says you must show good cause. The Department of Justice leaves it up to the local authorities to determine what that means and to issue the permits.
If the state of California is going to determine the criteria, then the state of California ought to issue them. They shouldn't delegate it down to sheriffs and chiefs of police. It all goes out to good cause. And therein is the problem, because different chiefs, different sheriffs have different interpretations of what good cause is and what good cause isn't.
Winchester says that's because the law is too ambiguous, and that can lead to problems. Take the small town of Ileton, just south of Sacramento. A few years ago, Police Chief Eugene Byrd issued permits to anyone who wanted one. They didn't have to show good cause, so long as they had a clean background. During one stretch, Byrd issued 1,500 permits, but he was accused of skirting the law, and he was eventually fired. Sheriff Richard Pierce is a little more liberal than Ed Winchester when it comes to issuing.
Now, I believe that the process we have in place now, where sheriffs and chiefs of police talk to the citizens that they know, that sit down across the table and are interviewed by officers and articulate the reasons why they want to carry a weapon, that we do a records check, that we have a face-to-face interview with a law enforcement officer is a very sound process.
Here in Fresno, both the sheriff and the police issue concealed weapon permits.
If you fill out an application and you bring that application into me and turn it in, I'll look at it. If it looks like you're going to meet good cause, I'll tell you up front that it appears that you will.
And he'll let you know if it appears you won't. The application says an investigation will be conducted into your statement of good cause. If you do not meet the good cause requirement, your application will be denied. Good cause in Fresno means receiving death threats, you're a businessman and you carry cash, or you have a high-profile position. After fingerprinting, a background check is done. A felony conviction automatically disqualifies you, and some misdemeanors may also hold you back: petty theft, drunk driving, or prostitution. The final call goes to the chief, who interviews everyone who applies. He talks to neighbors, friends, family, and checks mental history. But he says not everyone is cut out to carry a gun, because eventually they might have to use deadly force.
We know there's a lot of people out there that do not have what it mentally takes to kill another human being, and that's what deadly force is. It's killing another human being.
Now, coming up in the next 15 minutes of our newscast, when can you use deadly force? Since 1995, the Fresno Police Department has issued 377 concealed weapon permits. The Sheriff's Department has issued 127. Both Winchester and Pierce say no one has ever committed a crime with a concealed weapon they have issued, although many have been revoked for other reasons.
And you'll have more coming up, right?
Part number 2.
All right, we'll stick around.
Back to my special look at packing heat. According to the law, when can you use deadly force? Well, the California Penal Code says homicide is justifiable and not unlawful when committed by any person in defense of himself or herself. I spoke to a woman who carries a concealed gun. She asked me to protect her identity.
And you definitely would use it.
Yes, sir, I would.
And you'd shoot to kill if you had to.
Absolutely.
The woman took part in this 4-hour class, now required by state law for those applying for a concealed weapons permit. Some didn't mind having their pictures taken, but they feel the same way she does about using deadly force.
Would you hesitate to use deadly force if you had to?
Not at all.
You'd kill somebody?
Yes, I would.
One man, who asked not to be identified, told how he was nearly attacked by 8 men at a bar he once owned here in Fresno, and how his gun may have saved him.
Pretty soon, one of them started buffing up, started coming toward the bar. I pulled my weapon out and pumped 4 rounds over their heads. Pretty well ended the situation. They left.
But Ron Saul, who owns the Pistol Club and teaches gun safety, says a move like that could have escalated the confrontation.
You pull that weapon out and you fire your warning shots, you've now invited a gunfight. And your odds of surviving a gunfight with 8 assailants would have been very slim.
Saul points out when firing warning shots, you don't know where the bullets will land, and in case you get into a gun battle, you've now wasted ammunition. Police Chief Ed Winchester says drawing up a game plan is a good idea.
Think about situations you would find yourself in when you're carrying a weapon, play them through mentally so that you're prepared to deal with them when they occur.
Dave Madrigal, a 5-year veteran of the VCSU, urges people to familiarize themselves with their weapon.
And do training above and beyond what's required of the yearly state training.
And he says,
know the deadly force policy required by the district attorney.
Why is that important?
It's important so you don't wind up in jail.
But DA Ed Hunt told me the law is ambiguous, that he evaluates on a case-by-case basis, but he declined to comment on camera, saying simply, I'm not trying to define it because someone might mishear what I say and then someone gets killed. Saul claims carrying a gun may not be the answer.
There's a misconception that if you're concerned about your personal safety, the solution begins and ends with the purchase of a firearm. Personal safety begins and ends with awareness and common sense.
Yeah, and Ron Saul is exactly right, because sometimes when you get a gun, when certain people get guns, they develop a false sense of security, and that's not good.
I'll bet they do. Now, there have been some changes in the law. What is the most recent and the biggest change involved in this weapons permit law?
Well, I sat in on this 4-hour class, and the biggest complaint I heard is now the law says you have to take a 4-hour gun class in order to get that concealed weapons permit. They teach you all about the law, they teach you about gun safety, the grip, the stance, and also how to properly store your gun when you're not using it. It is very important and crucial to gun owners around not only the state, but the country.
Especially for the gun owners with kids and that sort of thing.
Exactly right.
Thanks, John. Good job.